Welcome!
Welcome to the Omniverse of Nick and the opening to What If Green Goblin Survived. Before we get into it, be sure to check out the Omniverse's homepage, where our channel mascot Omni will direct you to the Discord, all the Google Docs, and everything else the Omniverse has to offer, along with smashing the like button, subscribing to the Omniverse of Nick, sharing the Omniverse around, and turning on all Omniversal notifications, and commenting future requests and expectations in the comments section. With all that said, let's begin. This is the next Marvel story, which is going to be 3 parts, and it regards the Green Goblin and what if he survived. Now, I have already done Doc Ock and actually made my own Doc Ock Venom, since literally all of the internet never freaking wanted to. Now we touch upon the other Spider-Man villain that deserves a lot more attention than he got, Green Goblin. Now, for those not familiar, Green Goblin, Norman Osborn, is probably, and pretty much is, Spider-Man's, whichever one you want to go with, whether it's Tom Holland, Tobey, or Andrew, or any continuity of Spider-Man, his most dangerous and fearsome villain ever. And he was introduced to us in the first Spider-Man with Tobey Maguire. But he was killed by his own glider in the film, and that was it. But he was brought back in No Way Home, like all the other main villains, and given more chance to show how much of a menace he is, and actually got to live with all the other villains after being cured. But what if that didn't happen? What if the Green Goblin survived? Would he actually remain alive and just remain evil forever? Would he even show up in No Way Home? How would the situation go? That's what we answer today in this part 1 of 3 of the story. We open up with Tobey backing Norman into a corner. And then, whenever Norman tricks Peter with his glider, and Peter blocks it by flipping out of the way with the spider sense, the glider goes into him, and then, Tobey's Peter, he just webs away, and, Norman's dead. That's the end of that, right? Yes, but no. You see, I'm going to say that the superhuman properties and the goblin toxin within Norman allows him to get out of the impalement, but it takes time. Even he thinks that he's dead at one point. But then, after a few minutes, he realizes the glider didn't kill him. Oh yeah, he's bleeding out a lot, but he's alive. But it's not enough for him to actually, fight Spider-Man again. And he's switching between the Norman and the Goblin persona, So it's tough. But with the Goblin persona shifting in and his superhuman properties helping him, he gets out of the glider, throws it down, repairs it, and decides to wait out the next opportunity, however long it might take for him to heal and get better. And then whenever the time comes, Spider-Man, Peter, will die. So, time passes, and Peter and Harry, they go through the school, and, Harry thinks his father's dead, and everything, it pretty much goes all the same, because everybody thinks that Norman's dead, or the Goblin, whatever you want to call him. So then we get to Spider-Man 2's introduction, and Tobey's Peter is fighting against Doc Ock, and the movie's going relatively the same. But someone has been watching the entire thing play out. The Green Goblin has returned after a great deal amount of time of not being there, and has now caught up with the action as Doc Ock and Peter, Spider-Man, are fighting right before they're about to go to the train and fight. So he surveys them until Doc Ock gets away and Peter helps on the train, and then he decides to still bide out time to figure out his next move. But then the Goblin persona starts to mess with Norman's, and just like No Way Home, Norman breaks the Goblin costume. And It's left shattered on the ground, and Norman's just shifted to, just him, you know? That's all we know for now. Doc Ock then kidnaps Mary Jane, and at this point, Norman sees just him being just Norman Osborn. Octavius, what happened to him? And is that Mary Jane? And before long, the Goblin persona switches back, and he gets into his No Way Home outfit of the Goblin, and he decides to track down Doc Ock and Mary Jane, because he knows that Spider-Man's not dead and that he will follow them. That's when he makes his move. So, we get the final fight between Doc Ock and Spider-Man at the machine, and the whole ending playing out just the same until Doc Ock is about to sacrifice himself to drown his machine. But then, out of nowhere, they all hear the words of someone they had long presumed dead, and someone Peter never wanted to hear again. Goblin asks if the Spider-Man can come out to play, with his glider and bombs flying towards Spider-Man, Doc Ock, and everybody. Goblin and Doc Ock lock eyes right when Goblin flies in and shoots the bombs at everybody. And then Doc Ock catches and starts to fight off Goblin, as this is now not about killing Spider-Man or Peter now that he knows he's Peter. This is about doing what he knows is right. And if that means protecting Peter to drown the machine and do it his way, now that he's in control of the arms, he will do it. And without even questioning how Norman is back and in the Goblin costume and all this, that, and the other thing, Doc Ock catches Goblin's glider with one of his arms. But Goblin, with his glider, cuts off one of the arms just like he did and uses his bombs and powers, and it's clear he's improved. And Doc Ock being injured and his arms malfunctioning, it's clearly shown Goblin's on top in this fight. And Toby's Peter and MJ cannot believe that not only is the machine getting worse, but Goblin is alive and Doc Ock is struggling. Peter knows the only way that they're going to finally help the situation, destroy the machine, and help Doc Ock is if he drowns Goblin with the machine. And Goblin continues to attack and even now begins to target Peter. But Peter uses all the webs that he can. He's not just using webs, he's using web trapments, balls, strings. He's almost trying to cover the entire, what's left of the building and around Goblin, especially his glider, in webs. And he just keeps on shooting and shooting and shooting and shooting and shooting. He is not stopping. And Goblin, he can't even move at this point. He is completely contained. And he didn't expect Peter to be able to be capable of this. But Peter says, I thought you were dead once. I won't make that same mistake again. And he just keeps on webbing and webbing and webbing and webbing. And Doc Ock says, now's the chance. And he uses his arms along Peter's webs, and they both together drowned Goblin and his glider with Doc Ock's machine. Afterwards, thinking that Norman is finally dead forever and knowing that their fight this entire time has been needlessly pointless, Doc Ock says he can't show himself in this world until he has finally gained control of his arms and until he knows he's no longer a threat. So basically like Doc Ock from a Doc Ock story. So whenever Doc Ock leaves, Peter now knows not only has he got a idea that because Goblin came back and caused this trouble along with Doc Ock the entire movie and everything, Peter knows now more than ever before he has got to not only remain a Spider-Man, but make sure that he improves himself and knows what to do, improves his own lifestyle, and truly shows that he is going to be worthy and ready for whenever another threat appears. especially if Doc Ock isn't able to control his arms and he comes back. So, time goes on. Peter, Harry, and MJ, they go on with the whole thing, and the end of the whole movie and the start of the third goes on. But they decide not to tell Harry that his father was alive, because since, he's actually buried in the seafloor with the machine, what good would be telling him that he came back? What would that do, So they decide not to tell him. Because, like I said, what would be the reason for that, So the third movie begins. Peter is shifting between the prospects of his Spider-Man lifestyle, but he knows this is a different Peter. He knows he has to remain as Spider-Man because Doc Ock is still out there. And the looming threat of what could possibly be a ramification for that and future villains, it's far too concerning a thing, especially with MJ and Aunt May and everything and her health. He has to remain a Spider-Man. So that threat and idea is put more into place whenever Sandman makes his appearance known. And that goes exactly the same. But that's not the only thing that Spider-Man should be worried about, and neither is Doc Ock's eventual return, which would be coming up right about now. But the symbiote of Venom arrives on Earth, but its presence isn't attracted to the likes of Peter Parker, and it's not attracted to Eddie Brock's upturning in rage and hatred for Peter Parker and Spider-Man. Instead, it looms towards a huge field of water that had not been touched, surfaced, or even mentioned or looked upon in many years. But it senses a presence down there, shifting between its last little flickers of life. But it is so weak that the presence is almost not noticed to the Venom symbiote at all. But its power, its genetic makeup, and the similarity of something lurking within this presence draws the symbiote towards it. So it sinks itself down into this body of water until this presence that the symbiote had sensed, it sees it and it latches on. And within just a few seconds, something bursts out of the ocean of water. Green Goblin has resurfaced, but it's no longer the same Goblin. Norman's persona has been completely swallowed out, and instead, the Goblin persona has taken over, shifting into Green Goblin with the Venom symbiote. And now, it only has one thing in mind: kill Spider-Man and Doc Ock. Will he succeed? What will happen with Doc Ock's return? And the second and third coming parts to Green Goblin's survival. And how will Harry react to his father seemingly alive?
Now get out!
What?
Get out! Everybody get out!